Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. So, one of the prime strategies that sociopaths use in order to seduce their targets was revealed in episode 2 of the Showtime documentary Lovefraud, although I'm not sure the filmmakers realized the significance of what they presented. I'm Donna Anderson, author of Lovefraud.com, and today I'll explain the strategy. Sociopaths target our dreams. This is a live streaming show, so if you have any questions, please send them by chat, and I'll respond at the end of this short presentation. Anyway, back to the Lovefraud documentary on Showtime. It tells the story of a prolific romance scammer, Richard Scott Smith, who swindled multiple women whom he met online. I still think the program is terrific. It portrays what really happens with sociopaths, and it captures the emotions of the victims. And visually and creatively, I think this documentary is fabulous. But let's talk about the content. The episode 2 focuses on one of the victims named Carla. She met Richard Scott Smith while they were both singing in a karaoke bar. She'd been married for like 39 years, but she left her husband, drained his 401k, and used the money to open a seafood restaurant with the con man. So she agreed to be interviewed, and in trying to explain her actions, Carla said that she absolutely loved the idea of owning a seafood restaurant. Smith offered her the opportunity to do it. So while she was debating what to do, she asked herself, what if I don't take this chance? So she decided to take the chance, and they did open the restaurant, and Carla was living her dream. Until, of course, the con man did with what con men do. I won't spoil it by telling you exactly what happened, but you can probably guess. Smith also targeted a woman who worked at the restaurant. Now, she knew what happened to Carla, and she commented, "He lives off of other people's dreams, and he makes other people's fantasies come true." Both of these women described in living color the most insidious tactic in the sociopathic arsenal. They target our dreams. Now, what better way to draw us in than to promise to make our deepest desires come true? How can we resist someone who wants what we want and seemingly has the capacity to achieve it? So, how do the sociopaths know what we want? Well, they ask us and we tell them. This happens early in the relationship under the guise of getting to know each other. And it goes something like this. So, the sociopath asks with pitch-perfect sincerity, what do you really want in life? And the target, or us, we may reply, I want a family before I get too old. Or, I want to live in a beach house on a tropical island. Or, I want to send my kids to a top college. Or, I want to retire while I'm still young enough to enjoy it. Wow, that's what I want, the sociopath replies with a touch of feigned surprise. We have so much in common. We must be meant for each other. So, dreams explain one reason why the betrayal of the sociopath is so painful. Not only have they manipulated us, deceived us, and stolen from us, but they also use our own most treasured dreams in order to do it. We have lost not only our love, money, time, home, and whatever else they've taken, we've also lost our dreams. And that really hurts. Then, of course, comes the self-criticism. Why did we believe the sociopath? Why did we wait so long to check them out? Why didn't we listen to people who warned us? Why didn't we listen to ourselves? Well, the answer is simple. because we wanted our dreams to come true. It's a brilliant tactic on the part of these predators. They use our dreams to hook us, and then, because of our dreams, we don't want to let go. So, after we realize that we've been scammed and our dreams go up in smoke, how do we move on in life? Well, we have real, true, genuine pain because of what the sociopath did. And in my opinion, we can't analyze away the pain, or we can't wish away the pain. Pain is emotional, and the only way to release it is through emotional tactics. We have to allow ourselves to experience it. The only way out of the pain is through it. Now, this isn't pretty. In my case, I spent a lot of time crying. To get out my anger, I imagined my ex-husband's face in a pillow and beat it as hard as I could. So, because our dreams were damaged, the pain goes really deep, and releasing it can be an extended process. We get rid of some of the pain, and more rises to take its place. Eventually, however, we get to the point where we've cried all the tears and released all of the anger. We get to the point of acceptance. Something awful happened, we had a part in it, but it's time to move on. And then we learn something about dreams. Dreams are linked to expectations, and expectations have a downside. Sometimes, if our expectations aren't met, we feel like we failed. Or expectations blind us to other opportunities that may come our way. Because the new opportunities do not match our expectations, we may not even see them. So maybe we do have to give up our original dreams, but that doesn't mean there will never be dreams again. Perhaps something better and even more fulfilling will come along, and because we're no longer looking for a particular dream and to make it come true, we can see the new opportunity. So, a final word about the Lovefraud documentary. In episode 2, the filmmakers also started to try to explain why Richard Scott Smith does what he does. They played a recorded telephone call in which the con man talks about his childhood, and they also interviewed his aunt. So far, they seem to be implying that Smith's childhood had something to do with his behavior. I want to see how they develop this explanation further before commenting on it, so depending on what's in the show next week, maybe we'll be talking about that. So, let's take a look at the questions that we have. I know we had one very good question right at the very beginning. So, Nobi says, or asks, why did the husband take her back? That's kind of a spoiler for those of you who haven't seen the show. She stole his 401k, and I would have never taken him back. Sometimes the partners of people who have been targeted by a con man recognize what has happened and recognize that the person that they loved has been blown over, shall we say, by a professional. And sometimes the love is strong enough that they want to overcome what has happened and rebuild the relationship. I've actually spoken to quite a few people who are in this situation and who realized that in a moment or several moments of weakness, their husband or wife was seduced by a predator. And they're willing to overcome that, but it also sometimes points out that there's something that needs to be healed in the relationship. So even though there could be a financial loss or other losses and also a loss of trust, sometimes it does bring to the forefront issues in a partnership or a couple that need to be addressed. I can just say that I was glad to see it. Apparently, they were able to begin to heal, and that's really good. Doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it does. Every situation is different, but in this case, he was able to see that his wife was in over her head and just kind of got swept up in it. I guess. I mean, that's, there was no discussion in the show of exactly why this happened, but that would be my interpretation of what could have happened. Okay, so let's see what other questions we have. Okay, so Monica points out that my sociopathic brothers exploit my desire for reconciliation. Yes, that is certainly something that a sociopath will do, and it's good that you recognize what they are, because you know what they are, you can see that it's probably an act, and knowing what you now know about sociopaths, you probably also recognize that they don't change, they don't get better. So even if you do have some kind of contact with them, I'm sure that you always have your guard up. All right, what else do we have? Okay. Teresa asks, does sociopathy usually manifest due to childhood abandonment? I read this and believe there can be other reasons. That is not necessarily true. Certainly some level of abandonment can have an effect, but typically what happens is that sociopathy, or the more precise disorders, which would be antisocial, narcissistic, and psychopathic personality disorders, they all have a highly genetic component. And what that means is that children can be born with a predisposition genetically to become disordered. And usually what that means is that one of their parents or somebody else on their family tree is already disordered. Now, there is an interaction between the genetics and the environment, nature and nurture. And so if someone with a predisposition to become disordered gets bad parenting, which happens often because sociopaths make terrible parents. So if the child's parent is one or the other is the one who's disordered, then it's a good possibility that they will get lousy parenting. Also, it could be if they're in an environment where there's a lot of havoc going on, a lot of drama, or instability. Any of those types of environments certainly can contribute. But I can also point out that I know of many, many cases where home life was fine, where the parents did their best, and a child still grew up to be disordered. And essentially what that means is that the genetic component that he or she inherited was just so strong that it could not be overcome. So a sociopathic parent can certainly abandon a child, but abandonment by itself is not necessarily going to cause the disorder. All right, let's see if we have any other questions. Josie asks, do they get worse? Absolutely. In fact, I recently completed a scientific paper that's been submitted to a journal about senior psychopaths, because in the mental health field, there's this rumor going around that sociopaths and psychopaths burn out at age 40, and they engage in less antisocial behavior. Well, my research shows that this is not true. In fact, I did a survey which had over 2,000 responses, and 93% of the responses said that after the age of 50, the sociopath was just as bad or worse as he or she was earlier in their lives. So absolutely, yes, they can get worse. Okay, what else do we have? Okay, so then we have another question. Are their childhood trauma mostly made up? And if not, how do you feel bad for that one small child? Well, sometimes the trauma is that they tell you about is totally made up, and sometimes it's true. Because, as I said, sociopaths the disorder is genetic, and it's quite possible that the sociopath can have abusive parents. And that it's happened a lot, because it does run in families, and you get an abusive parent who has a child. So the child is, first of all, got the genetic predisposition. Second of all, the terrible parenting. I mean, sometimes they don't have a chance. You can feel sorry for them, but I recommend you do it from a distance, because, you can't go back and fix their childhood. The sociopath himself or herself typically doesn't believe that there's anything wrong with them. That's one of the characteristics of the disorder. They kind of, many of them like the way they are. They like the fact that they can exert power and control over people, and they like getting what they want, and they see no reason to change. But plenty of sociopaths certainly will tell a sob story, talking about their abusive childhood, and everything that they went through, and sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not. I mean, I've certainly heard of cases where people got these stories and then checked with the family, and the family says that never happened. So it's hard to know, but either way, you shouldn't, if you recognize that somebody is a sociopath, the safest thing to do is to protect yourself and not have that person in your life. Okay, what else do we have? Can sociopaths be duped by other sociopaths? Yeah, sure they can. And in fact, sometimes they can be duped by people who aren't sociopaths. We did that once with, it's in my Lovefraud book. When I was cooperating with one of my husband's mistresses to try and figure out what he was all about, she ran a scam on him, and he absolutely fell for it. I mean, it was great. We were laughing. We were laughing a lot, knowing that she was feeding him all kinds of garbage, and he was eating it. So, so yes, sociopaths can definitely scam each other, and they can even be conned by regular people, probably because they are so impressed with their own genius that they think that nobody could ever possibly get anything over on them. So when it does happen, it's pretty satisfying. Okay, so yes, all right, that seems to be what we have for questions for tonight. So thank you all for joining me for Lovefraud Live. And this Sunday, I'm going to watch the next episode of the Lovefraud on TV and see what it says, and we'll be talking about that. So thanks a lot, and see you next week on Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Bye-bye.